Want to just share before I start talking that video, that beautiful music that Sarah McLaughlin put to this prayer of Saint Francis. I wrote out the list of all the images where they came from. Some came from articles that I've read. Some came from sanctuaries that I know. The pig was actually a friend of mine. His name was Franklin. Catskill Animal Sanctuary, and I was there that day that photo was taken, and we were all laughing so hard because the author Jeffrey Masson, who wrote The Emotional Lives of Animals, was trying to we were trying to get the photo just right, and the two pigs, Miss Piggerty and Franklin, were there, and anyway, we were laughing so hard, and Franklin had been very serious, and he looked and he saw us laughing. And then he laughed. And that's when they took that picture. That was him laughing with us. And so anyway, I have the list. I'm going to leave it up front. So if anyone wants to take it, there's plenty for everybody. And it lists the different, like where all the photos came from. And the Bear Rehabilitation Center is actually in New Hampshire. It's very close. So I just want to share that. And God bless Sky for helping we put it together. And so this is my last talk and my guest appearances for UCM, and I really want to thank, I'm going to cry, our UCM community, because you really received these talks with so much love and openness and support, and it's really been my honor and privilege to be able to share like this. I'm learning a lot, and this has been a significant part of the beginnings of my animal chaplaincy journey. So my talk is what is mine to do, and this is probably the single most challenging question in my life. And I'm going to share a little bit about that, as well as I'm going to use the prayer of St. Francis to talk about this concept. And I'm going to use it specifically regarding our relationship with animals, because that's the area where I feel like, because the prayer of St. Francis was by the patron saint of animals, St. Francis. So I'd like to use it to explore what is mine to do with regards to that. And, okay. So with regards to what is mine to do, I'll just speak for myself. In my early 20s, maybe even in high school leading up to it, I was very focused on my artistic life, on my music life. I wrote music like crazy. I mean, I was writing songs all the time. I was performing all the time. I was very, I told a friend, I said, I'm inspired. She said, you're possessed, because I was like, music was everything to me. And it's like, and I feel like it's where all the love in me came out through music, and just my focus was there. But it was interesting that during that time, I always felt there was like this feeling like that a really big part of me wasn't being fed or being listened to, and so basically, like around my early 30s, through a series of things, I had kind of an awakening that really changed my focus. I became, not through a decision, it just sort of happened, where I was really very focused on animals. I felt I had animals who were my companion animals, and it was at first driven from grief, because an animal I really loved, and I worked really hard to try to save over a period of years. When she died, much to my shock and amazement that I couldn't stop that from happening, the grief was so all-encompassing that it propelled me to want to take all that love that I had been pouring into trying to save her life into other animals. So, but what ended up happening was, what is mine to do quickly turned into what everyone else should be doing to make the world a better place. So it's easy to go from like, yeah, what is mine to do is to tell the whole world what they're doing wrong. And, so I went through a period of writing songs that told everybody what they were doing wrong. And, it was just coming out in all these very big ways. And to illustrate how I was not really lined up at that time, I had a song called "Hamburger Forest" about the rainforest being destroyed for cattle ranching. Meanwhile, I was wearing this like really beautiful red leather jacket and this black leather mini skirt, and I remember, and I had the T-shirt that says "Save the Rainforest," and someone came up to me and said, "You got like a little duality going on here," and so anyway, so then through that, I got really involved. I left the city. I went to help some people open a sanctuary, and through that, I went to the other extreme of not telling everyone else what is theirs to do, but then in thinking everything was mine to do. That I was now responsible for, all the animals, all the human, it just was like a snowball. It wasn't, I don't think I was really meditating. I was always a person driven by action and very goal-oriented. A friend of mine used to say I was a human doing. She used to say, you should really try to focus on being a human being because you're like a human doing. And I was just very driven by, and I was working in helping professions, helping humans, and then volunteering, helping animals. And anyway, again, then that led to, depletion. And then through that, I became, finally, after I tried all these other extremes, I went inward. And that's been a long process and has looked very, very different than I imagined. I realize a lot of times, I don't know what is mine to do, not in my mortal mind. I know it in my heart. And that I can't always, and for me, sometimes I have to stop before I act because I have a tendency to be like, oh yeah, that's mine to do. And then, I can't do it. So with the prayer of St. Francis, I'm just going to go through this, each line if we can. The key for me, this prayer at one point when I started, throughout my journey, there was one point where I would read this prayer several times a day, especially in the time when I was helping animals. I was doing volunteering with the rescue group, and there was a woman, her name was Susan Clark, and she was a volunteer with the group I worked with, and we called her Bodhisattva Susan. I might cry talking about her. At the time she had fourth stage breast cancer, and she had such clarity. She was like a Buddha. She really was. She had such clarity of purpose for why she was here and what she wanted to use this time for that she had. And I was able to go with her to these places. She sort of helped, really economically depressed communities, people who had situations that she worked in connection with this rescue group and the Humane Society. And I would go with her. And there was no problem that she would not take on. She poured all of her resources, every dime she had, into this work for animals. And she was I learned a lot from her. But I also, held her up as this example of like, oh, that's how to be in the world. But of course, what was Susan's to do isn't necessarily mine to do, because Susan was her own person, and was at a different place in her journey than I was. And so when I tried to do what was Susan's to do as mine, I was very, I ran into a lot of problems. And so this first line of the St. Francis prayer I love. He says, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. It doesn't say, Lord, I am an instrument of your peace. Lord, I'll fix it. I got this. It says, make me an instrument. Sculpt me. I am available for you to teach me and work with me and change me. I'm available. I'm willing for you to make me an instrument. And this, I read this prayer so many times, and I never saw those words, make me. For the longest time I thought it meant I'm supposed to, come in and, be a spiritual, problem solver. And so, and then the other word in this phrase that I love is instrument. Because coming from music, I could resonate with this, So imagine we're in the orchestra of life. I am an alto. I'm not singing lead. And now that I'm, that if it might not seem like what I'm doing what I feel like I'm being called to do is accomplishing anything, but when it all comes together, it's beautiful. And so that if I can just get still enough to hear the inner guidance and what my higher power, what God is telling me, then I can be the instrument I'm being asked to be. God is working in my life to make me an instrument of peace. It might look different in a variety of ways, and that sculpting might be happening in a variety of different ways. It will be happening through prayer and meditation, but it also might be happening through very uncomfortable situations, because maybe my prayers are being answered through that uncomfortable situation. Maybe through that situation, I'm being more and more sculpted to be an instrument of peace. And so, and then the next line, where there is hatred, let me so love. The operative word is so. It isn't, I'm going to be the love everybody needs and I'm just going to come in here and fix it. It's let me so love. Let me share the love I have. Let me plant seeds of love. And with regards to animals, this is really, for me in my life, has been very important because as a doer, I really just want to fix things. And so I suffer when they're not fixed. And I suffer when I can't figure them out or find a reason for it. So this, when it's I'm just here to be a presence of peace, to sow love, and to do this not only with regards to animals, but with regards to the earth as well, because the earth is our habitat and the animals' habitat. I'm just keeping the track on the time. I'll try to be fast here. So the next line is where there's injury, pardon. And so to me, this means acceptance, understanding more deeply. The key to pardon is understanding that I am only seeing a portion of a situation and asking to see it through the eyes of love, through God's heart. And I'll use as an example, and I had read this book because I'm an animal advocate. I had read this book, Slaughterhouse by Gail Eisnitz, and I read it some time ago. But prior to reading it, I had really strong opinions about what I thought, about anybody killing animals. And when I read this book, though it is about animals, it's also about the human suffering. It gave me this profound compassion for slaughterhouse workers. It completely opened my mind. I had no idea, because in my limited, view, I saw things in this black and white way, and this book really opened me up, and really, and so I use this as an example to say, where there's injury, pardon, to say that I don't see the whole thing. It doesn't matter what it looks like to me. I don't know the larger plan. I don't know what's happening. I'm just being asked to be an instrument of love. And then the others where there is doubt, faith, where there is despair, hope. Hope to me is, hope and faith are like the two key, most important things in our expanding our compassion for animals, because what we do really makes a difference. The things we think about makes a difference. Prayer and meditating, including them in our vision for co-creating a world that works for all, really makes a difference. And the next one, where there's darkness, light. I'm going to reference, there's a Stephen Covey book called The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I haven't mastered any one of them, but I think one of the things, the exercises in it, is you draw a circle, and everything you have direct influence over, you put inside the circle. So that would be what I eat, maybe sometimes you don't have control over those things, but for the most part, what you have direct influence over. And then everything you don't have influence over, but that you care about, is outside the circle. And of course, what he says is we put our focus on outside the circle. And then we're frustrated. But if we all put our focus on the inside of the circle, how can I be more loving? How can my life be more loving towards animals? What are the daily choices I'm making? And not focus on so much on the big picture. Focus on the big picture of what's happening in the world that I have, direct responsibility and control over. And so that's where I take where there is darkness, light, to bring in the light through my own, in the sphere where I have choice. And where there's sadness, joy. And this is where I think it's so important to celebrate. A friend of mine calls it aerobics. And to really celebrate animals and nature and how amazing and magnificent the other beings are, and how awesome it is that we get to share this experience of being a spiritual being in a physical body with these other amazing spiritual beings in physical bodies who are different but similar to us. And I think the more we celebrate that, and the more we really affirm our gratitude for that, I think that also really is an expression of being an instrument of peace and creating more hope and joy. And then I have a lot more here, so I'm just gonna keep it short and talk. The last few: to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. This is, I'll just use an example. Recently, there was an article on the major newspaper on the front page. Someone really angry about that there had been an article a week before about how the ways people mourn animal loved ones. And so this article was like, how dare you? In the face of so much human tragedy and wars and human suffering, how dare we have to, read about how people mourn animals they love? And then on a popular show, the comedian, within a week, was telling how someone had asked him to pray for people in a war that's happening, and then he got another phone call from a friend asking them to pray for his dog, and everyone in the audience laughed. And these things make me very, very sad, because this is part of our human species thing that nobody suffers like us. We get this, that somehow love is so limited that there's just not enough to go around. Like this myth or this false belief that if we love animals deeply, then we're taking away from love from humans, or that it's ridiculous. And to me, this is I take this into to console, to be consoled as to console. I think this is a huge part of our what we do with these animals. When we do this with each other too, right? Oh, this group's suffering is way worse than this person's suffering, and it's like somehow there's just not enough, love. You can't just love everybody, and I think that the more we do to rise above these beliefs and to just affirm, that there is more than enough for everyone, that we are all love, and that animals are an expression of love, just as we are. I think that will help them and us as well. Because like I said, the belief systems we have about animals, we do the same thing to other humans. We do it based on race, gender, religion. We find ways to divide ourselves and to have grievance. But I use that as an example because it makes me, I'm always surprised. I used a table in Grand Central with a group. I literally sat in a corner with humane education pamphlets, no visual, nothing that was visually disturbing. I literally said I didn't speak to people if they had questions asked. People would go out of their way to come up to me and be like, "You've got to be joking." It was like making them angry that someone was just sitting there caring about animals. And so I think it's just important to just be that person and just be a presence of love, and eventually it will shift. I'm running out of time here, so I'll just say that, if we apply this to the rest of our lives, and not only to our own lives, but to animals, we don't have to have had a relationship with an animal to increase our understanding and love for them. We can explore stories of animals. There's a gorgeous, gorgeous documentary on PBS called Patrick and the Whale that I highly recommend. It's really extraordinary. It's only about an hour long. But things like that, where, because like Charles Foremost says, when we imagine something, through our thoughts, when we think of something deeper, it manifests in the natural world. And so as long, and the more we keep expanding this, the more this will reflect in our relationship with other animals. Because, we need them and they need us. And it's going to bring me to the last line here, that it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. And I take this to mean being willing to let go of old ideas about animals, old ideas about myself, old ideas about myself in relationship to others and animals. And this also means, it's difficult to become the person I'm meant to be if I'm really attached to this person that I, used to be. Or there was a time, 40 years ago, I was not like, I loved animals, but I was afraid to even share that with people. I didn't want to, and even when I stopped eating meat, I was afraid for people to be angry at me, or, it was so different. And I had to be willing to let go of that person to become who I'm really meant to be. And so what is mine to do? I think unity teaches me that what is mine to do is to be part of co-creating a world that works for all. And in being, I love what it says about the truth and unity. And in scripture it says, the truth will set you free. And I love that because it doesn't say the truth will make you smart or the truth will make you happy. It means that without the truth, you're kind of trapped. You're kind of captive in this old, limited in this old way of being. But through the truth, we're set free to be who we really are. And that's my talk for today. Yes. I'm sorry it went on for so long.